Lina Nealon is back with us at the Warriors. She is committed to promoting the dignity of every human being and creating a society where everyone can reach their full potential. As the National Center on Sexual Exploitation's vice president and director of corporate advocacy, she spearheads Nicosi's campaigns to hold corporations accountable for profiting from sexual exploitation. She is, I want to repeat this because this is the most important job in my book, the Warriors book, vice president and director of corporate advocacy. But Lynn, don't tell anybody else, at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. It is that time of year again. Lena, we have to stop meeting like this, but I'm so happy to meet you again this time of year. We are going to talk about, we're going to get dirty, everybody. We are going to talk about the 2024 Dirty Dozen list. Lina Nealon, welcome back to the Warriors.
I love being here with you, Lynn. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely, because you work all year long on this campaign. And I want to give out the website. Everything will be in the body of this video for everybody to follow along, take action. But you can go to endsexualexploitation.org, Dirty Dozen List 2024. It's all there. Now, why are we here today, Lina? Let's start with that.
Yeah. Well, first, we're here because all of us, all your viewers, your listeners have incredible power as customers, as users, as shareholders and investors to hold companies accountable for harms that they may be perpetuating. And we're talking about mainstream companies that you and I use and love, Lynn, that we probably use every day, credit card companies, communication tools, even retailers. And companies provide us with a lot of good and products that we need and ways to communicate. But unfortunately, a lot of them also facilitate sexual abuse and exploitation. And we are talking hosting child sex abuse material, which is another way to say child pornography, by promoting tools for creating deepfake pornography of mostly women and girls, which we know is on the rise, for facilitating sex trafficking and prostitution. So, and again, we're talking about Google and Apple and Meta and Visa. So this campaign is a way for everybody to take very simple actions that have a vast impact on these companies. And we know it works because we've had the victories to prove it and because the companies have told us. So this is an invitation to your viewers and listeners to step up and do something tangible to end sexual abuse and exploitation in our world.
I just want you to know, Lina, that I will be walking through New York City streets with a flag, and I'm going to be saying, why not? People are walking around here with all kinds of flags. Everything's going on here. Sign this, sign this. I'm going to have a clipboard. I'm serious. You laugh, but let's get into this a little bit because I was thinking about what you just said. It is so prevalent, this exploitation. And we know, what is the bottom line, Lina? This is the first question before we get into the 12. And I don't know how you whittle it down to 12 even each year. What is the reason? Because people always ask me this, why this is allowed. What is the reason for all of this?
Profit. It's very
just
simple.
money.
It's money. And we see this over and over again. And even hear from the companies themselves, even those who are within the companies who are meant to protect the users, to protect children and to protect users, they often are fighting within the companies themselves. And they are fighting with executives and the profit arms and the engineers to prioritize child safety and user safety. And they even tell us that they are fighting against the profit machine. So it is very simple. They are protecting the bottom line at the cost of children and adult safety and well-being on their platforms.
Shame on them. Shame on them. But let me just go back. So you know this because you spend the entire year researching, calling, visiting. Give us an idea of whatever you want to reveal, like how you go before we jump into these 12 companies, entities, platforms. Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
How you contact them, you meet with them, kind of lay it out.
Sure. Yeah, we do. So the Dirty Dozen list is just part of our corporate advocacy work. We do meet directly with a lot of these corporations. So, with Google and Snapchat, Meta, Visa. And the Dirty Dozen list often helps open up doors to meet with corporations. So it's often, we always send them a letter saying, hey, you're probably going to be on this list. Sometimes they'll call us immediately, and other times they'll call us after the list. So I do meet with corporations. But the way we put together the list, first, it's important to understand it's not a top 12 list. This is not the top worst. We want to elevate certain companies either because we are hearing from parents, law enforcement, survivors of sexual abuse and exploitation, that this company is facilitating their own sexual abuse, or law enforcement is seeing a spike on a certain platform. So we do consult with people. We get a lot of in-reach, again, from parents, from grandparents saying, hey, did you know that this was happening? And we'll then further investigate. So we do a lot of evidence collection, and it really is an investigation. And I pose as a teen or as a child on a lot of these platforms. I go on Roblox, I'm on Discord and Instagram, posing as a teen, posing as a 9-year-old, to see the type of content I'm being exposed to, and the type of people I'm being exposed to, and the predators that access us and how easily they can access us. And then we look at their policies and kind of pressure test them to see where there might be loopholes. They say one thing and then the reality is another. And then, of course, we do look at research from other entities, other institutions that might be digging deeper into a certain either industry or a certain harm. And we do usually have a very long list, and then we whittle it down thinking about, okay, well, what emerging trends do we want to let people know about and kind of sound the alarm? So this year we're really focused on artificial intelligence and picked some targets that really are fueling the artificial intelligence created abuses. We'll look at what companies we think if they changed, it would create industry standards. So for example, I'll reveal one. Apple, 87% of children in the US, teens, own an Apple iPhone, right? 87%. So while Apple and Google have many similar issues, we decided to put Apple on the Dirty Dozen list, just given the sheer market share that they have, right? And that how many teens are using it. So those are just a few of the things that go into it. And then again, we're looking at elevating different issue areas, so we, you'll see we have some targets that are talking about that are hosting child sex abuse material, sharing and content. And then we have another one that might not seem as serious, but they're still part of the problem, and they're still part of that spectrum of exploitation. So, it's not an exact science. We don't have exact metrics of this one's worse than the other. It's a constellation of mainstream companies that we just feel strongly we need to sound the alarm on and press on them to do better.
And just to educate the public and get them, 87%, with Apple, I mean, that is, I call it a monopoly, but that's another story. But that's kind of, like
they're in effect gatekeepers to the internet, right? For kids.
And I would imagine that other companies follow their lead, sort of, or try to copy them, because everybody's a copycat, with their successes. So it seems to me they should really be a strong leader in this. Now, we're going to start going through this. But you've got one of my favorite ones that by myself, I cheered when I read the list. I have to say it, Lina, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. I was like, oh, how refreshing. So anyway, let's jump in. Name them, go through them, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can name them quickly, and then we can dive in where you might want to. So again, Apple, the Apple App Store was on our list last year, but this year we put Apple on because, we can talk about it. They could do much better, and they made some really poor choices in the past year that we wanted to elevate. And again, it's Apple. They should be doing much better. They have more power than many nations in the world, and they need to be held to a higher standard. Cash App, very popular peer-to-peer payment network. It's similar to Venmo and PayPal, but also it's the preferred peer-to-peer payment app between teens, but is also the preferred peer-to-peer payment network for criminals. So putting them on this list. Cloudflare, probably most people have not heard of Cloudflare, but it is critical to the internet infrastructure and allowing websites to function well and avoid spam and spyware and things like that. But unfortunately, this company also provides services to some of the most prolific sex buyer review boards, which is where sex buyers literally rate the women they buy like products and can pick and choose the type of women they want to buy. But these sites also serve as hubs for sex trafficking. So they're sort of like escort sites, which, is just but not trying to make prostitution sound better than it is, but also known for sex trafficking. And Cloudflare also hosts some of the most notorious deep fake pornography tools. Discord, been on our list for 4 years, very dangerous platform. It was very popular with gamers, but now is just used for video chat and texting and all kinds of messaging. And they're a really bad actor. LinkedIn, I think is what the one that surprises people most. And stop me, Lynn, if you want to pause and dig into any one of these. But LinkedIn, we elevated because, first of all, they allow very exploitative companies like ALO, which is the parent company of Pornhub, which we know has hosted child sex abuse material and videos of rape and image-based sexual abuse. More than 200 survivors have come out to sue them. They have been investigated by multiple law enforcement agencies. Super bad actor. But yet LinkedIn allows this company to advertise and use the platform like any other business. The other thing that we found with LinkedIn is that they too were allowing posts telling people how to create deepfake pornography and elevating certain apps. And I can share already some good news that we just tested it a few days ago, and we can't find any of the promotion. So there was a big story that featured the fact that LinkedIn was on the Dirty Dozen list with the UK Daily Mail, and then a few days later, they all disappeared. And also, there's a lot of sexual harassment. 90% of women who've used LinkedIn have been sexually harassed and received unwanted sexual content. So that just infuriates me too. And I'm sure it does you, Lynn, where, here's a place for women to talk about their professional achievements and, really showcase their authority and power and expertise. And like, no place is safe, right? Like, women then get bombarded with.
That's it. We have to remember, and I don't mean to cut you off, but like, no place is safe. And I don't like to sound so negative, but this is the world we live in. This is the environment. And we have to always keep that in the back of our minds.
Right.
Because, I say all this predation, again, it's about making money. They're 10 steps ahead of all of us. Okay. And women have to really keep that in mind. I pulled away from LinkedIn, learning about them. I want to say maybe about 2 years ago. I was hearing things, and I do use it here and there to keep up with people. But I am shocked. I am shocked. And actually, here in the Empire State Building is their headquarters, and
Wow.
they have 2 very large floors, very lavish of their headquarters. And I actually did try to contact them. I have to get back on that a few times, just directly saying, do you know this? But now we'll use the campaign, to the Dirty Dozen list to do that. Okay, let me let you continue because I want to hear your voice.
All right, you're good with me continuing, just kind of run through,
just run through the list. Except I'm warning you now, maybe save section 230 for the end, because that one is, I think it's almost my favorite. I think.
I love that.
I don't want to have a favorite, but I feel like if we could get in there with that one, we could make some decent changes. Now go ahead.
Absolutely. Meta, no surprise to anyone, but we really wanted to keep Meta on there because they made a move to end-to-end encryption. And what that means is that they basically have blinded themselves to seeing some major abuses on their platform, even known child sex abuse material, which there is a way, there's a hashing system. I won't go into it, but basically it's like a fingerprint on known child sex abuse material. Companies are able to identify that without going into and like abusing the privacy of users. But with end-to-end encryption, they in effect blind themselves to that and a host of other crimes. And of course, Meta is just, and all of Meta's platforms are consistent, especially Instagram, are consistently on, like top 1 or 2 for sexual extortion, top 1 or 2 for sex trafficking, prostitution, like any harm, you name it, Instagram, Meta is at the top. So need to keep pressing on them. And actually, we did have a win with Meta. We can talk about more, but we have been pressing on them for years, since probably 2019, to do something about sexually explicit images being sent to children in direct messaging, and blocking children from sending sexually explicit imagery. So coincidentally, the day after Dirty Dozen list, after we sent them a letter to, and they've been receiving so much negative press, they are now going to blur sexually explicit imagery. It's certainly not enough because kids can just click it and see it. But at least it's something. Microsoft GitHub is another one. I want people to get outraged and really press on this one, because we are in a crisis right now of deepfake pornography. And this is another thing I really want people to understand. Deepfake pornography has been around for a while. It was usually targeted towards celebrity women and women politicians, which obviously was gross, and we need to stop that too. And people probably heard about the Taylor Swift's deepfake pornography proliferating a few weeks ago or months ago at this point. But it is so easy now. It is so easy to take someone's image or a video, and within seconds, literally seconds, get such incredible images and videos that it's impossible to tell whether or not they're real. And we are talking about young boys, teenage boys, taking images and pictures of their female classmates, girls,
Yes.
going on Google Play Store or an Apple App Store where these apps live, and getting pornography made. And it is so deeply traumatic. Women and girls who have had deepfake pornography made have similar physiological effects as being raped. And in fact, they have said, watching and seeing this makes me feel like I'm watching my own sexual assault. It is so terrifying. And Microsoft's GitHub is a place where programmers share their codes. And again, I won't go into the technical aspects of it, but basically they have probably the single greatest ability to put a radical kind of like slow down this rapid proliferation of deepfake tools and deepfake websites. And they're not doing anything about it. They could remove them. They host some of the most prolific deepfake sites that are out there, and they just live there for programmers and nefarious actors to perfect the code, perfect the abuse. So we need to sound the alarm, because
I have to interrupt you. Stop on this one for a while. A couple of months back, could have been 6 months already, here, our neighboring state in New Jersey, Westfield, New Jersey. I did a newsletter on it. Everybody was talking about it for a day or two. Westfield High School. Okay. High school girls, and the one teen and her mom were making the media rounds. I saw them on a few different shows, which I thought was great.
Yeah.
I found a buried article about 2 weeks ago, a high school in Connecticut, same thing, but I didn't hear anything more. I found this very obscure little thing, which I tend to do. But here, Lynn, is what I want to tell you is most disappointing with the Westfield case. Is the principal, a woman, reacted 4 days later, and her response was, "We took it down." And law enforcement's response was, we don't know what to do. Like we don't have a directive. That to me is where we have to get in there. We have to educate each and every school, or we have to push on the parents to get into their school district schools, to push on them to educate. Because that to me was so frightening that a woman, especially, we deleted it. When we always talk about it's there forever, no matter what. It's been captured, shared, uploaded to porn sites.
Right.
That this woman, this principal, and I don't mean to pick on her, but I kind of am actually. If you're in charge of a high school, should kind of know these things, or like when you're a lawyer and you constantly have these refresher courses to keep up your credits. We have to have courses on this or something, but that's another program, another story.
That's not a program, but I agree with you 100%. I mean, I've had to educate school principals on the fact that kids under the age of 13 aren't even allowed to be on TikTok, because they were going to have this whole campaign of their kids making TikTok videos. I was like, not allowed. But yes, these harms, sexual, sextortion is on the rise, especially with teenage boys. And like I said, this deep fake pornography is being, it's weaponized against female teachers and female students. And of course they should know it and have policies. And, I think part of it too is people don't understand the deep trauma that, they think, oh, it's, boys will be boys, which I think is such an insult to men and boys in the first place. But maybe truly don't understand the vast ramifications of this living on the internet and what it does, how much it traumatizes those who are victims. So I think there's sometimes this disconnect, and I hear it with parents all the time that, oh, it's online, it's not as
Right.
serious. And we have all these protections for children offline, and parents are afraid to send their children to the playground, right? But then send them upstairs with their smartphones into their rooms and not understanding the dangers there and the deep trauma that even if there isn't a physical abuse and exploitation by the perpetrator, which we know often does still happen, and perpetrators, like hands-on perpetrators, meet kids online, but that the trauma of being exploited and abused online often is the same physiologically, emotionally, psychologically, socially, as it would be offline. So I want to impress that upon your listeners and viewers too, because there is this disconnect that, it's not my kid or it's not as serious, when in fact, sadly, every survivor or every parent we speak to who's either lost a child to sexual abuse and exploitation, or whose child has been a victim, they all say, I never thought it would be my child. So, we have to be vigilant. Yeah.
Every one of them. Okay, go ahead. I interrupted there.
So Reddit is a very popular platform too. They call themselves the front page of the internet, but and they just went public, which is really disturbing and upsetting to us. They've been on our Dirty Dozen list for 4 years too. Again, I can find deepfake pornography, hardcore pornography within seconds. We know it's a hub for sex trafficking and child sex abuse material. Children are bought and sold on Reddit. We work with survivors who say, yep, the pimps, that's where they sold us. But they just went public, which means that anybody, buying stocks, buying shares is part of the monetization of all of the rampant sexualization that's happening there. So we really want shareholders, investors to press on Reddit. Roblox infuriates me. It is primarily, if you have kids in your life, they probably play Roblox or their friends play Roblox. The majority of their user base is 16 and under, a fourth are like 10 and under. And Roblox has safety features, but they refuse to turn them on proactively, right? You have safety features. Why wouldn't you default? So that means that a 5-year-old can sign up for Roblox, and we know this happens. 5-year-old can sign up for Roblox, and they have access to hundreds of thousands of games. Anyone can create a game and put it on there. And we know that there are rape-themed games. Actually, a grandfather last year wrote to us and said, I saw Roblox on your Dirty Dozen list. I knew my child plays it. I alerted my daughter, and my daughter said, oh yeah, we actually just found our son was playing a rape-themed game, right, on Roblox. That's where predators like to meet children too, because they go where the kids are. And so the predators meet children there. There are sex-themed parties, and Roblox isn't doing anything about it. And we really want to continue shining the light on them and the fact that they have these safety features and don't turn them on, and they're not doing enough to moderate what's on their platform.
Horrible.
Yeah. Spotify, popular music streaming platform, and they were on last year, and this one shocked me maybe more than any corporation that I've worked on before. And when we were starting to hear rumblings about Spotify, people were emailing us and they're like, there's pornography on Spotify. And I'm thinking, oh, it's probably, some racy album covers, or, they're upset about some inappropriate lyrics. No, we are talking hardcore pornography, violent, even sadistic. We found an image on Spotify that I refuse to even describe in text or when I'm speaking about it. It was so sexually violent. And people upload these as part of their playlist covers or even as their profile pictures. But what was incredible this year is that we uncovered what's very clearly a network of both kids and adults sharing child sex abuse material. And some of these followers had literally tens of thousands of people in their network, and they talk to each other by renaming playlists. Spotify doesn't even have a way to report child sex abuse material. This is an industry standard to have a reporting feature so that you literally can save lives, right? Like if it's happening in real time and they alert law enforcement and at the National Center on Missing and Exploited Children, Spotify doesn't even have that as a basic measure.
Criminal.
Dangerous. It's like, I would argue in some ways it's more dangerous than like Meta, whereas Meta, I feel like now more and more people are understanding the dangers and it's been in the news, right? Like I think parents have a bit of a better understanding, still not enough, but that, hey, you got to watch out for Instagram and Facebook. But Spotify, like who would think, right?
You just don't hear about it. You just think music. You don't.
Yeah, right. You're like, oh, it's a streaming platform, right? Like, so, sometimes these are like, it can be dangerous in a different way because it's just completely, parents have no clue. And I had no clue. And I'm in this field. And then Telegram, oh my gosh, it's so scary. Telegram terrifies me and the rest of our team. Is being called the new dark web. It's much more popular abroad, but is gaining traction here in the US. And it's a messaging app, but it's the new dark web. The worst of the worst is happening there. They don't even have policies against child sex abuse material or image-based sexual abuse in chats. We see a lot of the deepfake pornography stories that you were hearing, including with the high schools, originated on Telegram. We think that they need to be investigated by the Department of Justice, and we are going to be pushing on Google Play and Apple App Store to investigate them and hopefully boot them off of the app stores. Like it's that dangerous. And then I'll lastly just add, we also have a watch list that we reserve for entities that maybe were on the Dirty Dozen list previously and made some changes, but that we still want to monitor them closely and make sure that the policy changes are actually being implemented, and that we still want to elevate as a, dangerous place and one to watch. So Snapchat is on our watch list. They've been on and off the Dirty Dozen list for many years. They were on last year. They did make a lot of changes this year and credited the Dirty Dozen list with helping them identify some changes that they need to make, but they didn't make any changes to the most dangerous aspect, which is the chats themselves. So, and we're still finding a lot of, for example, they said that they really cleaned up their public areas of sexually explicit content. And our recent tests showed, it seemed like there was even more on there, for a 13-year-old account, how to please women in bed. And it was such graphic language. Again, we didn't even show it as part of our evidence with like promotion of alcohol, a woman dancing on a strip club pole saying my new career, just teenage girls grabbing boys' private areas and bathrooms. Like, this is not like, this was not cleaned up. So again, even when these companies make
this watch list, I don't know. They all have to
hundreds of companies.
Everybody's got to remain on that watch list. That's just my opinion. Okay, let me not interrupt. So go ahead, get to the one that I think really needs to be changed, updated, something.
So Section 2, Communications Decency Act, Section 230. So obviously this is the outlier because this is a law. And normally we have like institutions, corporations on this list, but we really want to have Section 230 on there because we consider it to be the greatest enabler of online exploitation. And what's happened was the Communications Decency Act, Section 230, was actually meant to protect children from pornography. And this was back in 1996, right? So think about where we were with the internet, right? There was no Facebook. I don't even think YouTube was around, right? Like this is at the very nascent stages, and it was meant to kind of protect companies and spur innovation. And basically what happened was that it was to protect them from liability for what third parties would post, right? So they were protected from liability for what I, as a user, would post on, again, let's say Facebook. But there was a clause, like a Good Samaritan clause, that the companies would show good faith and protect users, and particularly children, from seeing pornography. But what has happened is that in some really unfortunate misinterpretation of this law in courts, big tech basically enjoys blanket immunity from anything that happens on their platforms, including child sex abuse material, including sex trafficking, even if they know it. And there was a law that was passed saying that it was called FOSTA, the was it Fighting Online Sexual Abuse Act, or Sexual Trafficking Act, and Stopping Enabling of Sex Trafficking Act, FOSTA, passed in 2018. But again, the courts have not used this law and have further misinterpreted. So basically, the tech companies are just like, nope, we're not liable. And I'll give a very specific case. The National Center on Sexual Exploitation has a law center, and we sued Twitter on behalf of two young men who had thought that they were sharing images, sexually explicit images, as 13-year-olds. They thought they were sharing it with a girl over Snapchat. And it turned into sexual extortion, or what we call sextortion. And it was sex traffickers who basically then said, you need to send us more, or we're going to, send this to everybody you know. And it went on for quite some time. And finally, these two boys were able to extricate themselves from the traffickers. Well, fast forward 3 years later, when they're 16, these images, a compilation of these images, are posted on X, on Twitter at the time. And the young boy, he was getting bullied at school. And so he emailed Twitter saying, these are pictures of me when I was 13. I'm 16 now. He sent his license, and Twitter came back saying, we've reviewed this request and we find no violation. So they literally reviewed this content, right, of a 13-year-old boy. He's 16 at the time. And it wasn't until he tried committing suicide, his parents got involved, and they happened to have someone from Homeland Security at their church. And it was only then that Twitter came back. Well, we were suing them in the Ninth District Circuit Court in California, huge court. And Twitter basically said, we're not liable. Even if we knew it was sex trafficking, that was child sex trafficking, we're not liable. And it was because of Communications Decency Act, Section 230. I'd like to say, there's nothing decent about this Communications Decency Act, because it has really let them get away with anything. So we wanted to elevate this because there is growing desire within Congress, and certainly among those of us fighting big tech. There is growing desire to really amend and clarify the original intent of this law, because it's really what is allowing these corporations to get away with everything, all the evils, all the abuses that are currently happening is because of this law and how it's been misinterpreted.
I don't even know what to say. It's just, I always just say, oh, Section 230, they claim it's a billboard, big tech. It's just, we just, let people no responsibility. But certainly since 1996, I mean, geez, I think I had a different hair color. I mean, it's years ago. It's decades ago. It's right. No, but I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing. But let me ask you something, Lina. Do you actually think, you said there's a growing, movement, there people want, what is taking so long? Because clearly we have the abuses, we have the studies, we have the proof, we have the children, we have the families. Why can't they move on at least this and update it? Okay, instead of these big tech people who knock me off of my high heels when I walk around the halls of Congress, these very well-paid lobbyists and people like that. It's getting a little exhausting that there's nothing in favor of children and families. So right. Do you think it'll really grow into something anytime soon, or we just have to keep chipping away at it? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit about this one, but it's like, I'm all about being a warrior and punching appropriately. And this is a big one. It
is a big one. It is so frustrating. I mean, there are so many laws right now, or some bills like the Kids Online Safety Act that literally have been in the works for 2 years. And
Mhm.
it has so much bipartisan support. It's so many, like, there's organization, we're all working together, right? Like
Right.
organizations working on bullying and suicide ideation and eating disorders and us with the sexual exploitation and abuse. We've all banded together. We're all working on COSA. But big tech has so much money. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Like they send in their like armies, and I say armies of lobbyists, right? Well funded, well paid. I mean, these tech companies have infinite resources and they are paying off Congress. And then, we have, these relatively small nonprofits. We're all starving for
Mhm.
cash, right? Like it's really the
Right.
David against Goliath. And big tech also, they can, if you look up some of these laws, like Earn It, like COSA, or anything against Section 230, if you Google it, you don't find anything other than big tech propaganda. And I 100% think Google is manipulating the searches,
You
right?
think, Lina?
Yeah, no, I'm
Because
serious.
all you do
It's
is find negativity. Like there's
all,
not like
yes. And
not
then, yes,
so
or the
yeah.
big tech will also, I say, takes advantage of like the LGBTQ plus community and feeds them misinformation. And so with COSA, we saw that community saying it's going to harm us. Now we've shifted it, we've
Yes.
clarified it, we've worked with those groups and helped them understand that this is for their protection too, because those groups, are in terms of sexual abuse and exploitation are targeted, and COSA is meant to protect everybody. So there's a lot of misinformation. So even with these Kids Online Safety Act is such bare bones. It's like the basics. It's like if you have safety features, turn them on.
Right.
Roblox. You need to have parental controls, caregiver tools if you have children on their platform, and it's so hard to even pass that. So back to Section 230. I do think that there is an appetite. There was actually just a hearing, I think it was last week at the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, examining Section 230. And I think it was called Where Are
Good.
We Now? Section 230. And they heard from witnesses about really what the intent was. And, big tech likes to scare members of Congress too and say, the internet's going to break if we amend Section 230. Well, that's what the car industry said. That's what, big tobacco said. That's what
Right.
pharmaceutical companies said. And we need to have basic protections. And um, big tech has proved that they are either unwilling or incapable of basic protections for their users. And either unwilling or incapable, it should really scare us, right? And at this point, we really need some government oversight, just like
Right.
we had with big tech, big
Yes.
tobacco, just like we had with car manufacturers to say, no, you actually do need to have
Yes.
seat belts and airbags and brakes, right? And we don't have that with the tech industry, and it's because of Section 230.
Well, this 118th Congress they must understand all of this and they must take action. That's coming
And they
from
need
me.
to hear from the people that this is a
They
priority.
I mean, what else actually do they have to hear? You know what I'm saying? There's
Right.
been plenty, and I before we started recording, they can fast track TikTok uh, from a political standpoint, as we've seen in the last 2 months, and they're to divest it, to get rid of it, whatever they're talking about. Yet something like Kids Online Safety Act, COSA, it's there. And again, you
Right.
pointed out so correctly, these are bipartisan efforts. We have every kind of group coming together. Doesn't matter religions. We have it all coming together, fighting
Right.
for the safety of children. I also say, and families, children and families. So they have to really step up. It's time, as you pointed out, tobacco and all this stuff.
Right.
We need some guardrails here and fast. Now, oh, I could just talk to you all day. Tell us now what our warriors, what the entire country needs to do, and how easy it is.
Yes. So we do make it so easy. The whole purpose of this
Even though
campaign.
we probably just scared everybody, but it's very easy.
No, well, we will talk about some wins and hope. So there is hope, and we have seen so many
Yes.
changes. Of course we want them to be faster. Of course we want them to be more broad based, but still it makes a big difference. I want to share like one of my favorite wins just of the past year. So Google search, Google in general, we've been working with them for about a decade, and they've been on the Dirty Dozen list for probably every year for most of a decade. And we put Google search on in 2022, and they did make some really great changes, but these campaigns go on. And part of our search campaign and our follow up with Google was just blur sexually explicit images on search, right? There's 5.3 billion searches a day. And of course, not all of those are sexually explicit by any means, but we got them to finally turn on safe search for kids 18 and under, right? We're like, why don't you just do it for everybody? That should be the default. So this August, they finally turned on safe search for everyone as the default. So if you are looking for like a search, it might seem like a benign search, but sexually explicit content comes up, it's blurred automatically. And they credited people calling in and writing in through the Dirty Dozen list campaigns for this change. I mean, we've had like some other major ones. TikTok was on our Dirty Dozen list also for a few years. And again, of course, TikTok has a lot that needs to change and make better. But they were on our campaign back in 2020 when it was just starting to come up. And they deactivated direct messaging for kids 15 and under. And that's one of the main ways that predators, connect with kids online. And in fact, if you look at research, again, TikTok has a lot of problems and it's still dangerous. But if you look at research, they're lower than their peers in terms of sexual interactions between minors and adults. And we believe that it really is because they just disabled DMs from them. So these are just like a few samples. Another huge one of our first wins when we started in 2013 was Hilton hotels. We all remember when you'd walk in a room, you'd turn on the TV and you'd already see pornography ads, the on-demand pornography. And I think that was the first time I was exposed to pornographic images as a kid, was like walking into Marriott Suites. I still remember it, and clicking through and seeing porn advertised. And so we targeted Hilton hotels, and so many people wrote in that the executive said, please call off your supporters. We will make changes. Just please stop filling our inboxes. And all these companies say that, similar to what policymakers say, that one email, one tweet they consider is 1,000 people. So they really do listen. Last year, when we told Apple that they were going to be on the Dirty Dozen list, I received probably 3 texts, multiple phone calls, and multiple emails over the weekend begging us not to put them on the list. Apple, right? And so these companies, and another one, when they weren't on the list, called members of Congress and said, oh, look, we're not on the Dirty Dozen list this year. So these companies actually do care. They don't want negative press, and they do listen to what their customers and users say. So if you go to dirtydozenlist.com, you will see an overview of all of these platforms, in section 230 that we're featuring and why. You can click on these little boxes and you will immediately see where you can take action. And we all know right now, right? You put in your address, we have a pre-populated language that you can change if you want. And then it goes to executives or others at the company, or policymakers, members of Congress or Department of Justice. So easy, but it really, really does have an impact. And of course, the more people take action, the greater impact it has. And even if it doesn't have, even if the company might not be responsive, we often use this, we get a lot of press around the Dirty Dozen list, and they take notice of how many people are emailing Discord, and we're able to tell them thousands of people took action. And sometimes then being in bed, getting that press attention gets the companies to change. Or we send information to members of Congress and we say, listen, we had 7,000 people take action on this platform. You really need to do something about it. So it's multiple ways that people taking action really have a major influence on the corporations themselves, but also on press interest and policymaker attention.
No, it really lasts. I promote it all year long.
It's
got to keep going. It's got to keep going all year long. We have to make sure we keep that horrible OnlyFans, because I get a lot of reports here
Yes,
about, teen girls, especially on OnlyFans.
absolutely.
So I want to keep that one up and out there.
Yeah.
Lynna, how I want to just remind you a little self-care, that you work on all of this on, constantly, that you have to, I don't know, go out in the backyard and breathe once in a while or something, because no, because this is like,
It's true.
it's very debilitating. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but, or a psychologist, but I just know this is so, your energies and focus and all of your work is put into this. And I know you're a mom. Let's finish up. So please promise me you're going to take care of yourself. I don't care if it's 5 minutes a day, just step away from it. And if you get real crazy, you can just call me. I'll talk you. No, because
Oh, I love
because
that. No, we do. Like, it's true.
it's
We
hard.
need the constant reminders, but we also need, like knowing people like you, Lynn, exist and getting moments of time with you, it does re-energize me. And again, like people taking action too, we're fighting
Yes.
for your kids. We are fighting for your families. And it is very, very dark. We see the worst of humanity. And when we see people taking actions, it helps, buoy us up and, that people care. Yeah, the
Empowers you
power, and then
to
the power of change, right? Like you said, I have 4 children. I would not waste my time doing this work if I didn't think that change was possible and if I didn't see actual change happening. And that's why I stay in this fight, because I see that we're winning. And I see that there are people like you, Lynn, who really care, and we are making a difference. And I just want to have more people join up, because again, the more people join you and me, the faster change can happen, right? And the more long lasting it
exactly.
can be.
Exactly. The more warriors we get on board, I always like to say, Lynn, it's 2024, so we can no longer, I really believe this. We don't have the luxury anymore of sitting on the sidelines. We now
No.
have become more immersive, more vocal. We have the power. We have to be the leaders and give them the information, because people, I'm sorry, are a little lazy. So if we hand them everything
We're
and it's
overwhelmed,
easy,
right?
okay, you're very nice. Yes, they're overwhelmed. They're lazy and they're overwhelmed. I'll give you that. If we hand them everything in a nice, neat little package, which Dirty Dozen List is, then if it takes somebody all of 5 minutes,
Right.
to read through quickly, add their name, add their zip code, add whatever they're doing. That's what we urge and need everybody to do. Finish up, Lynna, with what's your one takeaway? How do you want to finish up? What is your concern right now? I know my focus a lot, well, is all of this, but is also this AI.
It is the AI for
Mm.
us as well. When you have leaders in the tech industry sounding the alarm and seeming quite concerned about AI and how quickly it's advancing and spreading,
Yeah.
the rest of us really should take notice. And we cannot sit back and just wait for things to happen to us. We need to demand that there is oversight on AI and ethical guidelines that everybody needs to adopt. And we actually are working with the White House Counsel as well as with several state legislators on making sure that that our lawmaking does not lag the way that it has with the internet so far. We need to really move quickly on this, or our world is truly about to change in radical ways. So yes, please pay attention to the AI. Again, if you take action on one thing, one target, please take action on Microsoft GitHub. I know it's maybe not one that people know well, but we need Microsoft to step up in a principled way. And they have so much power in this space, and they need to know that people are watching what they are doing.
DirtyDozenList.com 2024. Well, again, we're going to have all of this, Lynna, in the body of the video so people can take their time. They can reread. They can find out what's going on with all of this. I want to thank you. Thank you for taking the time to join me. I could talk to you for 24 hours, but you're a very busy warrior. This is the most, in my book, important campaign of the year, the Dirty Dozen List, because it does reap rewards and benefits. And again, is a very easy take action for everybody. So, Lynna, I can't thank you enough. You are vice president. I think they should make you like president or something of this. Because it's like vice president and director of corporate advocacy. No, why don't you just be a president of corporate advocacy? I'm renaming you, even though I don't work there at Nicosia. But
Oh, you're the best.
for spearheading this and for working on this, it is so important, and I'm so thankful. And I look forward to August. Hopefully, I'm gonna. I think I kind of made up my mind already. There's a big summit. I'm gonna put the link to that also in the
Yes,
body
that
of
would
this
be
video
great.
and start gearing people up to get worked up for that one. And we're going to continue. And I'm just so thankful. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me today, for doing this work. And you are a tremendous warrior, Lynn Nealon. Thank you. I will talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Lynn.